Oh, okay, good. Just getting my stuff going. Man, I'm not gonna lie. I love this music, this intro music that we have. I'm a big fan, and I've talked to you guys before about state control and how important that is. This is a live example of me using this regularly, every single week. I use this music as a form of state control. And it gives me about a minute to just kind of ramble on my own as we're letting people get in here, letting everything get started, get situated. Simba, do you want to come up here? He's sitting down there looking at me like, I want to, but I'm not sure if I can. Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right. And Simba is joining us now. All righty. Let's go ahead and get started. So, how are you doing? How you doing? Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most important topics in game, in socializing, in understanding people generally. Bento, stop that. We're going to be talking about humor. And today I'm going to be teaching you how to be funny. How to make a girl laugh. This can be used when you're flirting with a girl. This can be used when you're in a relationship. This can be used when you're in a job interview. This can be used literally anywhere, anytime, because this formula and the things that I'm going to teach you, the techniques I'm going to teach you today, are universal. They are not only relegated to the field of dating. In fact, this may be one of the most universally applicable lessons that I ever teach. However, if you want to truly enjoy this lesson, if you want to get the most out of this and really take it up to the highest level, if you would like to reach the height of humanity, the culmination of all of civilization, all you have to do is find yourself some sort of beverage vessel. I, personally, have a Jaws cup because I don't even particularly like Jaws. It's fine. But here we go. And I have a cup of coffee. You can fill your beverage vessel with whatever it is that you like and lift it up with me now as we join together in the worldwide simultaneous cheers with chaps. Cheers. All right. Now, shall we begin? Before I jump into this lesson, I want to tell you guys a few different things. First of all, I am not a professional humorist. Cut that shit out. This is not my job. I am not a funny man. I'm not a comic. I'm not any of those things. So, if you see any of this and you say to yourself, well, Jack, that's not right, or you're missing this, or, oh, how could you not know this? Okay, fair enough. That's fine. This is the result of my experience. Now, my experience is about 2 decades in the field of going out, talking to girls, flirting with them, seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. If you want, you can also go out for a couple of decades and try and experiment, and you're going to, I'm sure, end up with different results than me and have different opinions about this stuff than I do. That's fine. None of this is the absolute rule, except for one part that we're going to get to later. There is one absolute rule in this, but I didn't make it because, again, I'm not a professional humorist. So, with all that said, let me go ahead and jump into how to make a girl laugh. All right. So, the reason that this lesson is so important is because a lot of times whenever you ask somebody like, oh, what should I say? What should I do? How do I get a girl to like me? How do I get this thing going? They'll tell you, You need to just make her laugh, man. If you make her laugh, then you're in. You're in. That's all you have to do. You have to make her laugh. Okay, cool. How do I do that? Oh, man, just make her laugh, right? Just be funny, be clever, do these things, right? Okay. That is a lot harder than it sounds, especially when you're trying to make it up on the fly. Now, I have talked before about the different ways to practice humor, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first, I want to explain to you about the different types of humor. Okay, so I have come up with, again, a non-exhaustive list. If I had more time, I probably would have made more, but I've come up with a list of 4 different types of humor that you can use regularly to make a girl laugh, to be funny, to be the guy that everybody's like, oh yeah, he's a clever guy, he's a funny guy. Okay, but before we go into explaining those, remember I said there is a rule that, to the best of my knowledge, is never broken. And this was not created by me. This was created by professional humorist Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert comic strip. So if you aren't familiar with his work, and I'm not going to lie, I use a lot of his work as well. He's a massive influence on me. But in this case, I'm just straight ripping it off. So I'm going to tell you up front, this is not my creation, but I've never seen this rule violated. So this is Scott Adams' humor formula. There are 6 different types of humor, and to be funny, you need to have at least 2 of them. So these are clever. This is your play on words, or something that is maybe a little bit overly smart, or kind of subverts things, changes things around. Naughty. You guys know naughty. And in this community, naughty may be one of your better options, because if you're chatting with a girl and you're trying to get her interested in sex, and you want to kind of bring the topic up, but you don't want to do it in a weird or creepy way, you can do it through humor. Naughty is a very good way to do that. The next one is bizarre. Something that is just, what in the world is that, right? So this is where, if you just let your mind wander and think of things that oh, I apologize, things that do not fit together, this is your bizarre element. The next one is cruel. And you might be thinking to yourself, cruelty is never funny. Well, cruelty is funny when it's combined with one of these other things. Like, for example, the idea of the idea of a small rat torturing an elephant is funny because it's cruel, but also it adds in the bizarre, it adds in the cute if the rat is cute, but not like a gross rat, like a cartoon rat. You can use cruel as one of your elements, and this works really well if you're combining it with cute, with clever, with bizarre, and sometimes with recognizable. Cruel and naughty is 50 Shades of Grey. And that doesn't it can work for humor, but not as often as the other ones. The next one, cute. You guys know cute, right? When you're dealing with small things, small creatures, you're dealing with oh, what? I am dying here. I apologize. Okay. You're dealing with small things, you're dealing with cute things, you're dealing with cartoony versions of things. That's cute. And the last one is recognizable. A situation in which people can understand it. They can relate to it because they say, oh, I've been there. Oh, I've done that. Oh, I've felt that way. But you're also adding one of the other elements, which then makes it funny. So, with that in mind, you need to have 2 of those 6 things, at least 2 of them. If you can come up with with some kind of joke or with some kind of situation that uses more than two of these, then you've basically struck gold. And you want to use that. You want to really build on anything that you can come up with that combines these different things together, because it will almost always be funny. Now, if you ever look at something and you wonder to yourself, oh man, why is this funny? Why is this so funny? Or on the other side, if you ever watch Saturday Night Live and you wonder to yourself, why is this so not funny? They thought it was funny, but it's not funny. Check this list. Like, screenshot this thing where, here, hold on, let me give it to you right here. Screenshot this shit and check it against your experiences as you go through life, as you watch movies or watch TV shows, or listen to podcasts or anything in the world where you're consuming media and it's trying to be funny. If it is funny, check to see, because I bet it has at least two of these things going for it. And if it's not funny, well, you can combine these and not be funny, but you must combine them to be funny. So, with that said, these rules are set, and now let's talk about the different types of humor. So these are some of the types of humor that I regularly use whenever I'm out, whenever I'm talking to a girl. And a lot of these I will use from the first sentence when I'm speaking to a girl, because getting a girl to laugh is an excellent way to get her invested in the conversation. The first one is maybe the one that I go to the most often, especially when I'm introducing myself. When I'm first approaching a girl, I go to this one a lot. This is the obvious untruth. And this is one where, you can make up the most wild ass shit in your mind, and it doesn't matter what you say, but it needs to be obviously a lie in order to be funny. So, for example, if I see a girl on the street and I want to approach her, and I go up to her and I say, "Hey, you look familiar. Did I see you 3 years ago on the summit of Mount Everest? We were up there trying to cure COVID," or something that's obviously untrue. And by the way, don't expect any of my examples in this to be funny, because they're not going to be. Because when you're just trying to explain things, it's a different mindset than actually being funny. So these are not going to be funny, but they're going to be examples from which you can draw the principles to then be funny. It's when I'm kind of off the leash, when we get into the Q&A sections, when you see Jack and Rich shooting the shit, when I'm just being my freewheeling self, that's when these elements of humor that I'm explaining to you now come into play in action. So this clinical laboratory setting version of me explaining these things, humor is never funny if you have to explain it. And so me explaining these, they're not going to be funny. I'm just going to give you the examples and kind of explain what they mean. So the obvious untruth. You're chatting with a girl and you say, "So what do you do?" "Wait, let me guess. You're a time-traveling assassin sent back from the future to save me for the sake of all of humanity." Obvious untruth. But she's going to laugh at it because it's so obviously a lie. I chose to use the word untruth instead of lie because lie has, the negative connotations to it, and that's not what we're going for. When it's obviously untrue, it's clear that you're joking. This is one of the reasons that I like this type of humor the most, is because it makes it very clear from the outset that I am not being serious. If she asks me my job and I say, "Well, actually, I'm a professional lion tamer, but it's been a little bit hard ever since Barnum and Bailey's closed down. So is there any chance that your company is, hiring, especially in the field of lions and large felines generally?" anything, obvious untruth that sets the tone for we're just having fun, we're just being silly, we're not being too serious. This is one of my favorites, especially early on in the interaction. Next, let's go to the illogical extreme. Now, you may or may not have ever heard of the logical extreme as in debates, in thought experiments, in concepts of philosophy, of politics, of whatever else. People will often use the logical extreme to demonstrate the fallacy in a position, the problems with something. And what if instead you took something to the illogical extreme? What if instead of extrapolating it out and making sense, what if you went way off base, right? So an example of this would be, I'm gonna try and think of something now. Girls wearing pink. You must really like pink, yeah? Now, and then you take it to an illogical place. So, what's your favorite song? Of Pink's. Again, my example is not funny. It's meant to illustrate the concept so that you can then extract the idea and apply it in your own way. Using this illogical extreme of you like this thing, so therefore way out in left field is a really fun way to keep a conversation going and to keep things light. Because a lot of times what will happen is you'll get into a conversational rut, whether you're asking questions or you're explaining something or you're talking about something and you feel that the conversation is boring, but neither of you knows how to get out of it. This one is your escape hatch. This is really useful. This is really useful in those situations of, I know this conversation is dying. I know it's going nowhere. Shit. She's bored. I'm bored. What do I do? How do I get out? Take anything that she says or anything that you say and then take it to a place that it should not go. Take it to the illogical extreme. Make it not make sense. Because not making sense is one of the key components to making someone laugh. And that's what we're going to next, is the unexpected turn. The unexpected turn is also called a non sequitur. It's basically when you take something out of just completely out of left field and you just throw it into the conversation and you act as if it's normal. This is the fun part. So if I'm having a conversation with a girl and I say something, now remember the different elements of the humor formula, because it still needs to abide by this. So if you just go out of nowhere and you say, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love sucking dick? Okay. It is a non sequitur. That's true. It is an unexpected turn. It is naughty. It doesn't have any of the others. So that's not funny. But if instead you went with, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love sucking Chupa Chups? Okay. Now you've hit the unexpected bit, right? Because you've taken the naughty, because it sounded naughty, but it's not. It's just Chupa Chups. It's just some little suckers, some little lollipops. So you mix it in with the recognizable, with, in some sense, the cute, depending on how well she knows Chupa Chups. That is an example of the unexpected turn, is when you can feel a conversation dying, and instead of keeping the conversation flow going, you say, fuck it, hard reset, okay. This is where you use the unexpected turn. This is where you use the non sequitur. This is where you just take something completely unexpected, completely. I don't like the word random because nothing's actually random, but that is the colloquial sense of the word random, is when you just come up with some weird shit in your mind and you say something like, so let me ask you a serious question. In the whole wide world, who is your favorite elephant? Fucking what? You take the unexpected turn, and this, especially when you pair it with, let me ask you something serious. Let me ask you a serious question. Let me get real with you. I want to know more about you. I want to know who is the best of Minnie Mouse's companions, Mickey Mouse's companions. Well, my answer is Minnie Mouse. Obviously, it's subconscious. It's coming out. But this totally random idea, whatever it is, grab it out of nowhere, throw it into the conversation, take a hard left turn, and that's one way to revive a conversation because it's unexpected. You will make her laugh and she doesn't have to answer the question, because the question doesn't matter and the answer matters even less. The idea here is, let's just push a hard reset on this thing, and then you can go from there. You can basically start the conversation over, but with all the knowledge that you guys already have about one another. This is a really good way to revive a dying conversation. Now, let's go on to my last type of humor: subversion of expectation. This is in a more classic kind of sense, or in a sense that everybody's going to understand. The idea of the elephant afraid of the mouse is the subversion of expectation. The reason it's funny is because he's so big and the mouse is so small that it doesn't match what you're expecting. And if you can set up something that doesn't match what they're expecting, this is what makes people laugh. A lot of guys use this in the form of self-deprecation. Self-deprecating humor is it's a useful social tool, but a lot of people fall back on it when they shouldn't. I'm gonna go off on a quick rant about self-deprecating humor for a minute, because I really want you guys to understand this. I find this to be very important. A lot of guys, especially from the West, will fall back on self-deprecating humor because they think that it makes them seem humble. Okay. Self-deprecating humor basically exists so that when guys are talking to other guys, when we're in a group of guys together, you can make jokes about yourself in a show of, I'm not trying to take over this thing. I'm not being aggressive to you. Self-deprecating humor is very useful for men because it shows each other, it shows other men, I'm not trying to fight you. In fact, I think that I am less than whatever you're expecting me to be. This is what self-deprecating humor is meant to do, and it's how it works socially. It can be funny as well. So when we use this, the formula, right? Self-deprecating humor can be very funny. Wait till you see my huge, big, throbbing toe. Is like, I am subverting your expectations there, and also in a sense making a self-deprecating joke because it implies that my toe is very big and my penis is very small. That's how self-deprecating humor works, and it's how the subversion of expectation works. But be careful when using this with women, because just like in a social situation with guys, it signals that, oh, I am not trying to be aggressive. I'm trying to, kind of just go along to get along. Let's have fun, right? We don't need to fight. You don't need to follow me. I'm not trying to alpha you or anything like that. It signals the same thing when you're talking to a girl. You're basically saying, "Oh, I don't want to lead this. It's okay if you have strong opinions. I'd like to hear those." That's why self-deprecating humor, when you're talking to women, is generally inadvisable. Now, there are times when I use it, but I still wouldn't advise it. I wouldn't even advise it when I use it myself, because a lot of times I will do something for the joke because I think it's funny, even if it costs me in whatever social situation it is. That is inadvisable, but I understand it. And that's something that I often do. Doesn't mean it's a good idea. As a general rule, I would stay away from self-deprecating jokes when you're talking to girls. However, that said, subversion of expectation is still a very effective tool, just not in that format. Whenever you begin a sentence and then it leads to something that they weren't expecting, whenever you come off in one way, right? Maybe you visually appear very you're a big, angry, scary dude. You got muscles and a bald head, and you have tattoos all over your face, and then you're like, you know what I fucking like? I like balloons. Okay, the subversion of expectation there is, right. You come off one way, and then you flip it on its head by, again, in this case, implementing the cute, right? You're implementing the cute with the recognizable, which is the visage, how you're coming over. And using this subversion of expectations, you can almost always make someone laugh. This form of humor, and a lot of humor actually, is just basically your brain seeing two different things and saying, right, this connection does not work. I cannot jump from A to B. This doesn't work, so therefore I laugh because I don't understand it. That is a lot of what humor is. And one of the things that you can do, and I really highly recommend this. Oh, right, before I forget, great. I've just figured out how we're going to get back to something I promised you at the beginning. One of the things that you can do is you can take these different types of humor, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are many, many other different types of humor as well, but these are some of the ones that I employ the most. And you can take the humor formula. And once you have these in hand, then watch something that you think is funny. Watch stand-up comedians, or watch a particularly clever TV show or something. For me personally, and it doesn't age very well, but maybe it's just something that I grew up with, so I still find it funny. I like Seinfeld a lot. And for me, going back and watching Seinfeld, I can see these parts of the humor formula being applied. I can see these types of humor being used. The subversion of expectations, the illogical extreme. They don't use very much obvious untruth, but the unexpected turn as well, they often will use. And you can go and watch your favorite stand-up comedians, your favorite TV shows, your favorite clever movies, whatever it is, and start to see how these things actually play in to what professionals are doing. Because once you start understanding how they're building the jokes, then you can start to make your own. Now, I did promise you at the beginning that I was going to talk about how to practice humor and how to get better at it. One of the best ways to do this is by basically being a crazy person. It's how it's going to sound, but it's not. So bear with me for a minute. Well, if you're still here at this point, then you're probably willing to put up with it. So practicing your humor it comes down to practicing your conversation, because most humor is done on the fly. So there's very little humor that you can have prepared unless you're doing like an on-stage show. So whenever it comes to making things up on the fly, you need to practice it. But the only way most people can practice it is by being in a social situation and just failing miserably. Because just like with anything in the world, you're not going to be good at it when you first start. When you start trying to do something, you're not going to be good. And you're not going to be good at making jokes, at being funny. That's okay. Instead, one of the things that you can do, one of the techniques that you can use that I use as well, and in fact, I'm kind of employing right now as we're recording this, is you can talk to yourself. And if you start having conversations with yourself, but try to make it a dialogue, try to make it Jack and Jack and Jackie are having a conversation. And in my mind, I am talking to Jackie. And then as Jackie in the other side of my mind, I'm hearing it and I'm formulating a response to that. So you can have an actual conversation with yourself and try to employ these different types of humor. Try to make jokes. Try to make yourself laugh, because this is the first step. Once you figure out how to make yourself laugh, then you know what you think is funny. If you know what you think is funny, then you've already done a lot of the work. Now you just have to figure out how to replicate that relatively consistently moving forward in the future. Once you can do that, other people will think that you're funny. If you make jokes, even if it's not their sense of humor, if you make jokes that actually make you laugh as you're making them, people will find that infectious. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, only the bad comedian laughs at his own jokes. Okay, maybe. Or, every professional comedian who's ever walked up on stage laughs at his own jokes. And there's a reason for this. And it's part of their act. They know what they're doing. It's intentional. The reason for it is because you're signaling to other people that it's something that you find funny. Laughing is an important part of our social cohesion, because laughing is something that we can all share, regardless of language, regardless of culture, regardless of anything else. We all understand what laughing is. Babies laugh before they talk. Right? I mean, like, even just the idea of like the peekaboo or the silly face, where you're mixing something that is expected with something unexpected. In the case of, oh, Dad has crossed eyes. That is funny because Dad does not usually have crossed eyes. I understand this sounds stupid, but also you understand what I mean. Jesus. Okay. This makes people laugh. Laughing is an important part of the social construct, and laughing at your own jokes demonstrates to other people, I'm having a good time. I'm having a laugh. None of this is too serious. Don't get angry. We're just telling jokes. We're just laughing. We are just basically carrying out a very silly thought experiment. When you do that, then other people will feel that and they'll start to join in and they'll start to laugh. And even if they don't love your sense of humor, they will often start to laugh with you and start to like you more because they're sharing something with you. They're sharing a social moment with you that is universal. So practice your humor by yourself. Use the humor formula. Try these different types of humor. Watch the people who you think are funny and see what their types of humor are. Try to actually pinpoint What is it about this joke that made me laugh? Why did I think that this thing was funny? That Dave Chappelle said, that Joe Rogan said, that, right? Pick your favorite comedian, throw them in. Use that to develop your own sense of humor, your own style of comedy. Once you start doing that, you're going to find that all of these things begin to fit into place. This is to help you analyze it so that you understand it, because once you understand it, then you can start to practice it. And once you start to practice it, it becomes natural. It becomes just part of who you are, just part of how you have your conversations. Now, with all that said, that was a lot of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and move over to the live Q&A section of today's lesson. So let's bring in the kid. How you doing, the kid?
Hello. Good. How are you?
Oh, it's a day, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a good day.
I was actually a bit nervous about today's lesson because, like I said at the beginning, like I'm not a professional humorist, and I don't even think that I'm all that funny, but other people often do. And so I wanted to try and explain some of these things, but man, that's not my job, right? Like I'm not good at this. I'm good at getting girls. I'm not good at explaining humor. And so I don't know if it worked or not. Did any of that make sense or click for you at all?
Yeah. I really like the breakdown of the different types of humor because that's something that made me realize, like, oh, this is why certain jokes work here. This is why maybe certain jokes don't. And just help me like be self-reflective and understand, okay, so this is my humor style I tend to rely on a bunch.
Yeah.
And kind of understand why I cause people to laugh in certain scenarios.
Yeah. Understanding the different types of humor. And like I said earlier, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not all the different types of humor, not by a long stretch. But these are some of the things that I rely on a lot, that I turn to, that I use, and that I've found to be particularly effective, especially when dating, when talking to girls.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that topic, I'm kind of curious, right? Because you mentioned a lot different types of humor. You're mentioning. Are you still there? Oh no! Did he freeze? Jack? Huh. Well, that's not good. Well, I might be on the stream alone, so we'll see how that goes. Oh, he's back. Jack, still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just went to get some water. Hold on a second.
Oh, okay. Your screen froze. I was like, oh, well, time to go solo.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm coming back right now.
All right, perfect.
I apologize. I hate walking away, especially when we don't have the panel to back me up, but I needed some water. I'm coughing up whatever.
It's all good. It's all good.
I have a bad case of dick lung, it seems. So the kid, questions.
Yeah, so one thing I'd be interested in, I know you touched on a little bit of like different scenarios of when you're trying to use humor, right? Touched on a little bit like when you would use naughty humor, how you use some of the other types, or maybe something bizarre, clever. So if you could maybe think about like from when you first meet a girl, right? So you get her in bed, kind of like what are the humor styles you're applying at the different stages of that date, whether it's you meet them out in person, get their number, it's on online dating, and then how does your humor evolve over the course from first meeting them to, taking them home?
You're going to need to read a situation. The basic idea of humor is to create dissonance and resolution. Essentially, I want to pair two things that do not match and then force your brain to try to connect them. That's what makes you laugh. if you're in an online dating situation, people expect that this is a sexual interaction, generally speaking. Like, unless you're on, I don't know, Match.com or something that is like, no, we're only here for serious relationships. That's not where most people are, right? They're on Tinder, they're on Bumble, they're on Hinge, they're on whatever, right? Hookup apps. If you're on a hookup app, the expectation is I'm coming into this to try and hook up. Now, if you compare a sexually charged opening with an ending that doesn't fit. Again, this is not funny, but the thing that I gave earlier about the huge throbbing toe or whatever, like this setup of here's what you're expecting to hear, and then here's what you actually hear. It breaks the pattern. So that one uses naughty in a dating app, in online dating, and anything like that. Using naughty mixed with one of these other things is going to work really well for an opener or for restarting a conversation that's otherwise died out, or for things like this where you're just trying to like get attention. And if you need to get attention, humor is one of the best ways to do it, because hey, long time no talk. It's like, it's not that doesn't get people interest. That doesn't get their attention. Instead, you basically trick their brain, right? So when you use humor in that situation, especially using the naughty side of things, that can work really well. Now, if you're meeting a girl on a street, you can still use naughty, but you'll want to tone it down a bit, because you want the suggestion, the implication of, if you took this the wrong way, it's naughty. But that's not what I said, is it? And you can, learning how to take something that sounds naughty and make it purely innocent, or something that sounds purely innocent but has a naughty connotation or a naughty undertone to it. That's one of the best things that you can do if you're trying to sexually charge an interaction, whether that's online dating or street game or in a bar or wherever you're talking to people. Adding in the naughty element is a really good way to start sexually charging the conversation, and to make sure that you don't end up in the friend zone, because friends don't say naughty sexual things to each other, right? And when you start to do that, when you start to kind of push those boundaries a little bit and add a little bit of the naughty humor into it, then you are further removing yourself from the friend zone. The different types of humor and when to use them. Like I said, I think I went through when to use these. Like, the obvious untruth is one that I use all the time, but I use a lot for openers, for beginning a conversation, because it sets a tone of this is just fucking silly time. It doesn't matter. Using the illogical extreme to revivify an otherwise boring or dying conversation. You just saw that, right? Like, everything it went dark for like 30 seconds. Why? Because the camera has decided, oh, we need to change the brightness setting. Why? The lighting has not changed. Nothing has changed. I hate this camera, the kid. This is a weekly thing. The next one, the unexpected turn, is like, I don't know what to say next, but I want to keep the conversation going. So, Hail Mary! And you just throw something stupid out there. That works really well for, okay, all right, reset button. And then the subversion of expectation is really used mid-conversation as you're talking, and you want to keep something funny, right? You want to keep going with the conversation. You're not hitting the reset button. You're not changing topic like you do with the illogical extreme, but You're trying to keep this topic going, but you want to keep it interesting. You want to keep them engaged. You use the subversion of expectation in the middle of this sentence or in the middle of this topic or in the middle of this conversation as you're continuing on.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so then the next question would be is obviously there's different types of girls, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to guess like, okay, well, obviously on like the slut or something, the naughty humor would work better, right?
What the absolute fuck? Paul, you're here. You're in the comments. Join us in the chat. Did you get the link? I sent you the link. You're awake. You're here. Join in. Please. I love having you on. The Hail Mary can both work or completely fuck things up if she's taken aback by what was said. Hard disagree. Hard disagree here. Because the Hail Mary is basically saying, this conversation is dying. I know it's dying. You know it's dying. I'm going to try something. If that doesn't work, your turn. I really like the Hail Mary because it shows that you're still invested in keeping the conversation going, even though the conversation is shit. Basically, I still want to keep talking to you, even though this isn't fun. But can we find a way to make it fun? Okay, I'll try this thing. And if that doesn't work, you do something. Or if you don't want to, I'll try again and just keep throwing shit out there until something sticks to the wall. Now, it might be an indication that you should stop talking, because if you can't keep a conversation going with one another, there's maybe a good reason for that, right? You just don't have enough in common, or you just don't click. Like this idea of chemistry and clicking, that might just not be there, and that's fine. But I don't think that there's any risk to the Hail Mary of fucking things up, because this is when things are already fucked up. That's why you throw the Hail Mary, because shit, we're down by 20 in the fourth quarter. You have to try something silly. That's when that thing is used, and if it fucks things up, it can't fuck them up worse than they already are. So disagree on that point, but I do like where your head's at. I'm so sorry, the kid. I completely interrupted you by trying to yell at Paul for a bit.
Okay, it's all good. The question is just simply like, obviously, like there's different types of humor would probably work better on different types of girls, right? Like it wouldn't be hard to guess, like probably the slut, like the naughty humor would work better. So when it comes to the different types, is it very much like obvious, like certain types of humor work substantially better on different types? Or is it much more just simply your delivery?
I think more than the types, the different styles of humor are going to work better or worse depending on you, depending on your style. So if I'm rocking up in my fish hat, I'm already cute. I'm already bizarre. I'm already unexpected and weird. But then if I take that and I pair it with a highly charged sexual energy, this mismatch of things makes it funny, makes it interesting, draws people in. Now, if I rock up as I am now, where I just look like a balding 36-year-old wearing a kind of weird gray t-shirt, right? Like, this is not cute. This is not bizarre. So I would then choose to inject cute and bizarre into my conversation, into the things that I say, so that I can have that pairing first and then start adding other things. That's the style that I build around. Now, you have a different style. Everybody has their own different style of humor, what they find funny, what they find interesting. If you want a really good example of bizarre working well in humor, watch Mitch Hedberg. The guy died in the 90s, but his stand-up comedy is very weird, and he's one of the few people who has ever lived that can actually tell funny, genuinely funny one-liner jokes. Watch some of his stuff and you'll get more of a feel for how bizarre can get paired with all of these different things, and you can start adding it in, and it's funny and it's interesting and it draws you in and you want to hear more. Learning how to match whatever your style is to these different parts of the humor formula or the different types of humor and things like that is much more important than worrying about what joke am I going to tell to this type of girl, because it's actually the other way around. You have your brand of humor, and if you're doing it well, if you're practicing it, if you're good at it, all the types are going to like it. Not every girl, but all the types are going to like it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Because next question was going to be on congruency.
Yeah.
That fact. So, because obviously, if you're wearing a giant anime shirt and your leading humor is naughty, that might turn some people off in a weird way. They're like, that's not normal.
Or if you can pair that, right? Because that's bizarre, right?
Yeah.
That's bizarre. So if you can pair that with something recognizable, with something cute, with something clever, it can work really well. But you need to be aware of how you're coming across to people. You need to understand when they first look at me, when I first open my mouth and talk to them, what are they getting? What are they seeing? What kind of person do they think that I am? And once you understand what that is and you're conscious of it, then you can start figuring out, now, how do I pair that with some of these other things to make it funny, to make it interesting, to make it so that you can't take your eyes off of me, so that you want to hear what comes next, so that you are dying to see the next part of this, the next chapter. Figure out how to pair those things. You have to be aware of who you are and of how people are viewing you. Not how you want to be viewed, not how you wish to be viewed, but how they're actually viewing you. And he's made it. Paul is in.
Yes.
Welcome, buddy.
Good evening.
Good morning.
Yeah.
What time is it there in
It's
5
just
a.m.?
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Oh, okay. 8 a.m. That's much more reasonable. Good. Welcome to the party, man.
Yeah.
Are you in a bathroom or a stairwell or?
No, I'm actually in my brand new apartment.
Oh, I see. I'm just hearing a lot of echo. How's the new apartment? How's the new place?
It looks pretty good. It's like some 80 square meters.
Yeah.
It's
And
pretty big.
you
Big
guys
bedroom.
have moved into Oslo, yeah?
Yeah. And the living room is freaking huge, but currently kind of not furnished.
that would
Okay,
explain the echo.
So the couch and the shed is arriving today. So
Excellent. Man, I'm glad you guys got situated, got set up, move all went without a hitch. Good. Excellent. So, before we move on to any other questions, do you have thoughts or something you want to add into any of the things that I've been saying so far?
not really. I kind of just joined when you were on the Hail Mary.
Got it. I understand. All right, then let's just go ahead and move forward with the Q&A. So, the kid, what's up next?
Yeah. So, what would you say to guys who maybe are really good, like joking around with their mates, right, and their guy friends, right? But then all of a sudden, when girls are around, they're just kind of like quiet, or they're not too sure how to adjust their humor to that scenario.
Oof, that is a tough situation. I understand it. My first go-to idea is double down on whatever you were doing before. Like punch the ego in the face, double down on the things that you were doing. But that often doesn't work if you're taking guy humor and then you're adding a girl to the mix, basically. Like I was saying earlier about self-deprecating humor, that's a good example of do this with guys, don't do it with girls. You need to practice, and you need to find these are the types of humor I use with guys that work. And I should not use those with girls because these have failed many times. The most common thing that guys will joke about is about dick jokes or something like that, and like, okay, cool, dick jokes are funny when you're talking to guys. They don't work quite the same when you're talking to girls unless you learn how to properly pair them. So dick jokes are obviously hitting on the naughty. And when you're dealing with guys, you don't have to go too deep into any of the other 5 categories for it to be funny, because we just always find it funny. But if you're talking to a girl, the only way that you can pair those kinds of jokes and actually get a laugh and get a good response is if you do a better job with the clever, or with the bizarre, or with the cute, or with something like that it doesn't require the experience of having a penis to still think that it's funny. Understanding your audience, who it is you're talking to, and understanding what experiences they do or don't have, and figuring out, okay, is this humor enough that they're going to understand it even without the experience? A lot of that comes with practice. But again, what I would recommend on this is watching stand-up comedians, especially if you can see some of the material that they practice. So whenever they hit comedy clubs, not the specials, just whenever they're showing up at some comedy club and they're just doing a 10-minute set or something like that. Okay, watch and see what they do. Watch comedians and how they interact with the audience whenever they call people out in the audience. One of the guys who does a great job of this is Dara O'Brien. He does a really good job of interacting with his audience, and he will just spend about 10 or 15 minutes, which is a long ass time when you're doing comedy. He'll spend about 10 or 15 minutes just talking to the audience and making jokes at their expense, but also on level with them. And it's a very difficult skill. Most people can't do it. I can't do it 90% of the time. But watching somebody who is a professional at this, who's really good, open up to their audience and say, okay, who are you? Tell me about yourself. Okay, now I'm going to make fun of you. I'm going to tell jokes, but we're going to do this on level with each other. So you're not even going to feel bad about all the bad shit I'm saying about you. Learning how to understand your audience and read them and adjust your humor to them comes with practice, and it is something that everybody understands is something you have to do, right? Because the second that a girl walks into a group of guys, everybody feels the change. Everybody feels the shift of like, okay, well, guess we can't tell those jokes anymore because now someone in the group doesn't have the lived experiences that we do. So you need to be better, or you need to change the humor. Both of those are acceptable ways of going, but understand it, practice it, try different things. Like I said before, try talking to yourself, practicing your humor on your own. And the fun part about this is that you can create different versions of yourself in your head, right? I could, instead of Jack and Jackie having their conversation where I'm just practicing my banter, maybe Jack and Jacqueline are having a conversation where, okay, cool, now I need to tailor the conversation, tailor the humor to a girl's perspective, or at least what I imagine a girl's perspective would be. Because again, I don't I don't know for sure what she's going to know, what she's going to think is funny. But when you practice it, the feedback that you get as you're talking to somebody, whether that's dead silence or whether that's knowing nods or whether that's like, oh my, or whether that's, oh my, uh, pay attention to the feedback you're getting, adjust as you go. There's no right way to do this, and there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. Right? What do you think, Paul? Oh,
Yeah, I think in terms of like jokes is, at least for my style, was very no. I'd rather go with humorous banter rather than trying to tell actual jokes, because
yeah,
I find that jokes can be kind of hit or miss. So it's a higher risk than just going with more humorous, flirty banters.
yes,
Um, but if I were to practice it, I think I would say if you have younger siblings, like younger sisters, that is, they're gonna give you like so much hate if it doesn't work, and they're just gonna be completely meh if it works, right?
yeah,
But it will give you an indication at least what works, um, and what topics that absolutely doesn't.
yeah. That's a good way to go. If you have sisters or if you have close female friends who aren't going to get angry or offended by the things that you say, where you can kind of practice your humor with them. Like Paul, you've met UJ several times, and UJ is a good female friend of mine who doesn't get offended by the things that I do. So for me, she's a great testing ground for like practicing my humor, for testing my banter, for different things like that, where I can throw things out, and if it doesn't work, she will also just tell me, just be like, that's not funny. You're terrible at this. Okay, fair enough. Take all that on the chin. If you try something and it doesn't work, especially in your testing ground, that's the best place to fail because then you're learning from the failures. So yeah, using sisters or family that you're again okay with making these kinds of jokes with, or using female friends that aren't going to get angry at you for the things that you do. These are great testing grounds, and if you don't have someone like this who you can talk to, that's fine. You need to start looking for one. You need to start building up a kind of relationship, a rapport with somebody that you will specifically say, nothing sexual will ever happen between us. That's not what I'm going for here. I literally want to be in the friend zone with you so that I can practice this stuff, so that I have someone I can talk to and get honest feedback of like, this is interesting. That's boring. This is funny. That's stupid. Okay. That's a really useful place to be. The kid, you got something else for us?
Yeah, I would say that makes a lot of sense. So it's just like comes down to just practicing. So then the other question would be is when you've coached guys, right, who might be on the more introverted side, right?
Yeah.
Maybe more quiet, maybe more like just shut in, more like tech people who spend more time on the computer with people, maybe. And they're not even super accustomed to making jokes with friends too much, right? Humor's a new thing I'm doing regularly, right? What have you found works best for maybe complete newbies to like just good humor in general conversations and being more lively and getting more attention to themselves?
Uh, okay. If you're new to this thing, the easiest pairing to do is cute and recognizable. Take something that's cute because a lot of the guys that you're describing are terrified of being offensive or of making someone feel uncomfortable or being taken the wrong way or something. So early on, avoid naughty. Clever is very difficult. Again, without practice. Cruel, again, practice. Cruel and naughty both need to be properly paired. And the only way to do that is by being willing to fail a whole bunch. But cute and recognizable are easy. And so if you can take cute and recognizable, you pair them together, and then you find a way to subvert the expectations. Here's what you expect to happen, and then it's not that. That's the easiest and the least offensive way to start practicing humor is with this particular pairing. Now, don't just repeat that thing again and again and again, right? Because if you get into a conversation and you're actively trying to make a joke every single sentence, it's not going to work. That just doesn't work at all. Instead, find a way to throw one in maybe every 5 to 10 minutes. You'll start to get a feel for what people laugh at. And like Paul was talking about earlier with the kind of flirty banter, a lot of that comes with practice, learning where to inject humor, where to pull back and be serious, or where to make her think that you're being serious, or things like that. That comes with practice. For more introverted guys, starting off with something like that. Now, a good example of that is when I speak Korean to girls, I speak Korean like a girl because 95% of the Korean I've learned has been from girls. And so that takes the cute and it takes the recognizable, but it does it in a way that doesn't make sense for me to be doing. So it's always funny to them, but it's not offensive in any way. It's not upsetting. It's not bad. It's just weird. It's like, oh my gosh. First of all, this guy speaks Korean, but second, why does he sound like a girl from the countryside? What the hell is going on here? Pair the cute, pair the recognizable, add in a little dash of the bizarre, which is the me doing it bit, and you have something funny. So that's an example of a really basic way to start being funny without having to really take many risks. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that. The easiest, like for complete beginners, is just find one thing you think works and then just stick with it. Use it once every time with like try to find these things you can use once with a girl and then it doesn't work anymore. Like for example, like it's the first time you meet the person and you want to kind of get off a little bit witty. Like they come there wearing some small cute size 34 shoes in European sizes, so size 7, 8. And then you go, yeah, I really love your shoes. Do you think they have them in my size? Right. The first time you say that, it works.
Yeah.
And then it kind of doesn't anymore. But at least then you get this sense of, okay, I can make a girl laugh.
Yes. That's a great example. So that's pairing the recognizable with the bizarre. Because, like, okay, I understand the shoes. You like them. They're cute. Also, it's bizarre to think of you wearing these shoes. That's a great example of using those things to inject this mental image from a persuasion and a conversational point of view. Visual imagery is the strongest form that you can use. So if you can create an image in their mind of you wearing those shoes or of you having those fingernail designs or whatever. You create this silly mental image in their mind that is funny. They will laugh. I like that. That's good. That's a very good example.
Yeah, it's like for new guys, it's just find these easy things to do that kind of works with who you are, and then for a little while just stick with them, and then pay extra attention when you're having a conversation to see what the girls actually find funny.
Yeah.
You don't need to try be intentionally funny because more oftentimes than not, you're gonna end up just being weird, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
So just try to be yourself and just see what other people find funny when you're talking, because that's going to be an indicator of where you can kind of lean on to build yourself up to a more well-rounded sense of humor. Or you don't even need to find it funny if you know they do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a very good point as well of paying attention to when you're not trying to be a funny guy. You're just having a casual conversation with your friends, with your family, with your coworkers, whatever. And then when they laugh at the things you say, take a mental note in your head and say, "Okay, I just tried this thing and that worked." Or same when they don't laugh, be like, "Okay, well, throw that one in the garbage. That's fine." Notice those things and use that to your advantage, because you will then start to develop your own personal sense of humor. This is it's always going to be different for everybody, because everyone has a different style, but the reactions you receive will be about 80% or so the same. There will always be some people who just, I don't like that type of humor, or I don't like this thing. Okay, that's fine. But most of your reactions are going to be the same. An example of both of these things, of like, the style has to fit who you are, and most people will understand it because it matches, because it's congruent, like what you were asking about earlier, the kid. So an example of that is whenever I first start speaking Korean with a girl, they're always surprised because they don't expect me to speak Korean. So I ask them, "Why didn't you think that I spoke Korean? Is it because of my face, you racist?" That works because I'm clearly not calling them a racist. Every now and then, about 1 in 10 times or so, they will think that I'm serious and like, no, I'm not a racist. I'm like, are you shitting me? Hey, you're the problem here. You're misreading who I am and what I'm trying to give off to you. But 9 times out of 10, they're like, you got me. It's funny. And they'll laugh at it, because "you're a racist" is not a funny sentence. "You're a racist for thinking I wouldn't speak Korean" is a weird sentence. "You're a racist for not thinking I would speak Korean" coming from me is funny, because it's all of these different things adding together. Does that make sense, the kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I, for example, could never ever try to do that because it just wouldn't work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and your style of conversation, your style of humor, all of this is a little bit more level. And like you've got your ups and downs like a sine wave. And my style is like peaks and valleys and like just losing my mind. But that's to my style. So
Yeah.
these things of taking something to the illogical extreme of like, "Oh, you didn't think I would speak Korean, so you must be a racist." That doesn't make sense, right? That's a ridiculous thing to say, but it fits for my style because it's way out there.
Yeah, I definitely remember one specific thing from when I started learning this stuff was that if you go for the extreme straight away, that also doesn't work. So you kind of need to, at least I felt for me, was the best to find, okay, let's find a baseline that works 95% of the time.
Yeah,
And then we can play around with it and kind of try new things here and new things there. And just,
exactly.
but you have this baseline that you know, okay, with if I just go basic me, then at least it will work.
Yeah. Yeah. Find your own baseline wherever that is for you, and find what works in that kind of like, okay, we're staying around home base, we're staying on this level generally, and then try experimenting with other things. Try experimenting with injecting emotions, with forcing a thought into their head, with creating mental imagery, with things
That's
like
my
all the
favorite.
stuff that I've been talking about. You start experimenting with that and see, does this work for my style? Do I need to go more, or do I need to bring it down a bit? And that's how you start to find your own sense of humor, your own style that works.
Makes sense.
The kid, do you have anything else for us?
Uh, I would have one question, right? And I think we probably covered it a little bit here and there.
Sure.
But how much do you guys adjust, right, your humor and your jokes and your style based on the girl's English level?
I don't change any of my type of humor. Like I don't reinvent the wheel because her English is shit. What Now, one of the things that you have to do is, if somebody is not a native English speaker, forget puns, forget any sort of play on words, anything like that, unless you can do it in their language. So if a girl's English is shit, then I will inject puns and silly words and silly humor in Korean, but I do them by pairing the clever, which is the play on words bit, with the cute, because I understand that I'm going to come across as an idiot if I'm trying to speak Korean. And so I do it as if I'm like a 6-year-old learning how to make word jokes, and that pairs the clever with the cute, and that works well. Take it down to like elementary school level, but keep the style the same. Because if I'm talking with you guys, I'm going to use a lot of play on words. I'm going to use cultural references that call back to this, that, or the other thing, because I know that you will understand it. But I would be stupid to try and talk to a 19-year-old Korean girl and make a callback to the Ninja Turtles, right? She doesn't fucking know. Why would she? But you guys know. So this goes back to knowing your audience and playing to who they are, understanding who they are and where they're coming from. You're not changing the style of humor, you're just changing the flavor. It's
Yeah,
the same.
I definitely think English levels plays quite a big role in this, especially if you're dating in a foreign country where English is not the first language. Of course, it's more than about having a base understanding of where their English level is, so you can kind of adjust and figure out, okay, what works if I have to explain this to a 10-year-old, or to understand this to a person with the English capabilities of a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Um, Not necessarily the same type of humor, but at least it needs to make sense.
Yeah.
Which means as Jack said, like play on words and stuff like that generally doesn't work because they don't understand it. Or like you can also do those misspoken words where you kind of mess up words on purpose. Those also works very badly with people that don't have a full grasp of the language.
Yeah.
And I think what I found to work very well for me is that very early on, screen where they are. So you might throw something in there, like for me, coming from online dating mostly, or at least a lot, I would generally screen them pretty early to see where their kind of level is at, so I know what to expect when I first meet them.
Yeah.
And I remember there was this one girl, I think I messaged on Bumble or something, and she had in her profile that she loved Lord of the Rings. And she typed back, so in Bumble, the girls have to write first, and her sentence was "Good morning." And so, okay, she
Top
loves
level
Lord.
game.
Yeah. So she says she likes Lord of the Rings. Okay, now let's see how much she actually understands. So I went, what do you mean good morning? Is this a morning to be good on? Or do you mean that this is a good morning whether I like it or not? Or do you just simply wishing me a good morning from The Hobbit, just
Right.
to see how she reacts?
Yeah.
And she ended up with this huge question mark, thought I was a crazy person.
Sure.
So I had to explain later that, okay, that was from a movie quote. But okay, then I know, okay, her English levels might be okay, but her cultural references are not up to speed at all.
Right.
And then okay, then at least I can make everything that avoids clever, at least for the most part,
Yeah.
and she will understand.
Yeah. And you could keep what you had there as a concept, but then in the same situation, but trying again, right? Like if there was a
Yeah,
different girl who also had Lord of the Rings on her profile, then you could be like, okay, well, this one didn't work last time. So this time I'm just gonna say it will be a good morning once I get second breakfast. Okay, cool. Now we're like, this is the easier version of do you get the cultural reference? Because if she's like, oh my god, you eat breakfast twice, and you're like, okay, that also didn't work. But
yeah.
it'll kind of test these things, play with them, give yourself permission to fail because you're gonna fail a lot. And it doesn't matter how long you do it and how good you get, you're going to fail a lot. Like top tier, top level, world class comedians, when they're practicing and writing their material, they go out to those little comedy clubs with 10, 15 jokes in mind, and they'll test them, and only 2 or 3 of them actually hit. And this is the guys who do this as professionals. And so they will fail more than they succeed on the jokes. Whenever you watch their special, that's the result of them trying 15 jokes, taking the 2 that worked, throwing the rest out, trying 15 more jokes, taking the 2 that worked. And so you end up with this hour of things that have all been tested and all work well. But the process there is a lot of failure. And so you need to understand and accept the fact that you're going to try jokes, you're going to throw things out there, and they're going to miss. Or people aren't going to understand what you're trying to do or what you're trying to say. And that's okay. You have permission. You have my personal permission to suck at humor as long as you keep doing it, as long as you keep trying and keep adjusting. Don't just stick to a thing that doesn't work, but adjust as you go. Pay attention to what works and what doesn't. Like Paul was saying with the Lord of the Rings quote, and like, okay, cool. I tried something, didn't work. All right. What if I tried the same concept but different? Okay.
Yeah.
That also didn't work. Then fine.
For me, it ended up adjusting to using things from Disney movies instead. So, like, whenever someone asked me where I'm from, it was always either I'm from Arendelle from Frozen, or I'm from Far, Far Away
Right.
from Shrek.
And those can work really well. So
Yeah, that works magic.
that's a good point of like finding a common cultural thread where Disney is one of those few things that no matter where you go in the world, everybody knows Disney. Star Wars kind of similarly. So if you had said, "Oh, I'm from a galaxy far, far away," most people would understand that reference, right? And you can find something that works as a common cultural thread and you can build that in and use that. Be aware of what it's saying about you or what it's showing, because if you're going to Frozen, then you're going more on the cutesy pop culture side, and if you're going to Star Wars, then you're going a little bit more on the nerdy sci-fi side. And if you're going someplace that no man has gone before, then you're going to the super nerdy end, which all of those are fine, but be aware of what you're projecting to the girl. Be aware of what she's getting from you. Well, with all that said, we're at about an hour and a half. We've gone pretty in depth on this topic today. I think this is a good place for us to go ahead and cut it off. Paul, I'm so glad you were able to join us today. Thank you. The Kid, Thank you as always for joining in. I really do appreciate it. And for you guys watching, thank you. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that this has helped. If you haven't done it yet, hit the little thumbs up button. Let YouTube know that, I don't know, I'm not a complete piece of shit, I guess. And next week is going to be a very special week for me, because next week is our 1-year anniversary of doing the weekly live streams. And I don't know yet what we're going to do, but we'll try to make it fun. We'll try to make it special. We'll try to do something a bit more interesting, hopefully we can get the whole panel here for next week to celebrate together. Hell, maybe we'll just drink a bottle of whiskey on the live stream and have a shoot in the shed. I don't know. I don't know yet. We will see, but I will see you guys next week. So until then, Papa Jack out.